1950 essay, The Wall and the Books, which he actually calls a note in the essay, Jorge Luis Borges is going to reflect upon a person from Chinese history who's also, you could say, part of legend, and he's kind of at a juncture point. It's the first emperor of the Qin dynasty, which takes over from the period of warring states, unifies China into an empire for the first time, effectively going from a kingdom to an empire. And he's typically associated with the legalist philosophy. There's been recent discussion about how applicable that really is. And he's often viewed as kind of a bad guy, although, Chinese politics has often relied upon similar, let's call it, strategies, tactics. And Borges is very interested in what Shih Huang Ti, which is Romanized in different ways at different times, what he's a symbol of, what his motivations were. So he says, I read not long ago the man who ordered the building of the almost infinite Chinese wall was the first emperor who also decreed the burning of all the books that had been written before his time. The fact that the two vast undertakings, the construction of 500 or 600 leagues of stone to ward off the barbarians, and the rigorous abolition of history, or rather of the past, had proceeded from the same person and had come to be regarded as expressions of his character, unaccountably satisfied and at the same time disturbed me to investigate the reasons for that emotion is the purpose of this note. So, what are we getting here? Borges is telling us that there's several things going on, and he's moved by the discrepancy, the discordance between what's going on here, and he wants to make sense of it. Now, these are things that did imperfectly happen. Obviously, he wasn't successful in burning all the books that came before him. He was pretty successful in, constructing wall stuff. But these two vast undertakings are characteristic, not characteristics, of this particular figure. And you could look at it in one way and say, well, there's nothing abstruse, there's nothing really that remarkable about this, because he's just doing what power figures do. Walls are defenses. You build walls, right? Why would burn books? His opponents were invoking them to praise the emperors who had preceded him. And he says, burning books and erecting fortifications are the usual occupations of princes. Now, we do have to pause on that a moment. He's not burning all the books because they praise the emperors before him. I mean, the Confucian ones, yes, certainly that's part of what's going on. And I suppose you could say the Taoist ones, you could read that in there, but there's a great many different books that would be getting burned in this conflagration, this policy. So Borges says Shih Huang Ti was unusual in the scale on which he worked, and that could be looked at in two different ways. So he says that's the opinion of some sinologists, but I believe these two acts are more than an exaggeration or hyperbole of trivial orders. Why? Well, for two reasons. One is, he says you can easily imagine taking a garden or an orchard, or we could even say an entire city, and enclosing it within a wall. But an entire empire, that's a different kind of prospect. And he says, nor is it a small matter to induce the most traditional of races to renounce the memory of its mythical or real past. Now he says the Chinese had 3,000 years of chronology at that point when Shih Huang Ti ordered that history should begin with him. 3,000 years of maybe legendary stuff. Is it really history? Not necessarily, but certainly a very ancient civilization at that point. So, he's going to say this is something quite remarkable. And now he starts to get into what he calls conjectures. And we're going to see, there's a lot of possible ones. So he says, Shih Huang Ti had exiled his mother because she was a libertine. The Orthodox saw nothing but impiety in his stern justice because he's banishing his mother. Perhaps he wanted to destroy the canonical books because they were his accusers. Perhaps Shih Huang Ti wanted to abolish the whole past in order to abolish a single memory, the memory of his mother's dishonor, not unlike the case of a king in Judah who wanted to kill one child, who ordered all the children should be killed. Herod seeking out Jesus, right, and ordering what's called the massacre of the innocents. Borges is not very satisfied with that conjecture. And he says it's a valid conjecture, but it doesn't tell us anything about the wall. It tells us about the books. It doesn't tell us about why do this massive building project. So it's not a very good conjecture. He says another possible way of thinking about this has to do with what this emperor does. According to historians, he forbade the mention of death and searched for the elixir of immortality. Very important thing in Chinese folk medicine and also religious Taoism. He became a recluse in a figurative palace which had as many rooms as the number of days in the year. Those facts, Borges says, suggest that the wall and space and the fire and time were magical barriers to halt death. And he brings up Spinoza, a very favorite figure of Borges, and he brings up something that Spinoza said that Borges repeats many times. All things desire the continuance of their being. Perhaps the emperor and his magicians believed immortality was intrinsic and decay could not enter a closed sphere. So perhaps the emperor wanted to recreate the beginning of time and called himself first in order to really be first. And he called himself Huang Ti in an effort to identify himself with that legendary Huang Ti, the emperor who invented writing and the compass, and according to the Book of Rites, gave things their true names. He dreamed of founding an immortal dynasty. He decreed his heirs should be called second emperor, third, and on to infinity. Okay, so that's another conjecture. Again, one that you can certainly think and imagine, but there isn't any evidence for it. And then he brings up the possibility of looking at the relation between the wall and the burning of the books. He says, we don't really know which of these happened first. And he says that depending on the order we choose, we would have two different images of what this guy is up to. So with one of them, we have a king who begins by destroying, burning the books, and then resigns himself to conserving. The burning the books doesn't actually fully succeed, so he begins this massive building project because he can at least conserve the empire by constructing. The other possibility is that he previously defended by building the wall and then became disillusioned and then destroyed the books. We don't have any strong evidence for either one of these. And Borges says, we could propose a third possibility. And he summarizes this as the burning of the libraries and the building of the wall would be operations that secretly nullify each other. So not mirroring, not reinforcing, but nullifying each other. And he says, perhaps the wall was a metaphor. Perhaps the emperor condemned those who adored the past to his work as vast as the past. The Great Wall is a massive undertaking, and just as stupid and just as useless. Perhaps the wall was a kind of challenge, and Shih Huang Ti thought, men love the past, and I'm powerless against that love, and so are my executioners. But someday there will be a man who feels as I do, and he will destroy the wall as I've destroyed the books, and he will erase my memory and be my shadow and my mirror and will not know it. Perhaps he walled his empire because he knew it was fragile, destroyed the books because he knew they were sacred books, right? Each of these is a possibility. And he's going to finish this up by shifting gears in a very interesting way. He tells us that the books did survive, right? We know that because there's plenty of them left. But he says the wall survived. The tenacious wall, which at this moment and always projects its system of shadows over lands I shall never see, we're imagining or relating ourselves to it, is the shadow of a Caesar who ordered the most reverent of nations to burn its past, and that idea is probably what we find so touching. Why? So Borges says its principal virtue may be in contrast between construction and destruction on an enormous scale. So when we say it's virtue, what we mean is its excellence, how it stands out, how it grips us, what it is that we find enduring and surprising about it. And then Borges is going to shift, and he says we could generalize and infer that all forms, and that's going to cover a lot, possess virtue in themselves and not in a conjectural content. And then he brings up the Hegelian philosopher, Benedetto Croce, and Pater, saying that all arts aspire to resemble music, which is pure form. And then Borges is going to say, music, states of happiness, mythology, faces molded by time, certain twilights and certain places. All these are trying to tell us something, or have told us something we should not have missed, or are about to tell us something. That imminence of a revelation that is not yet produced is perhaps the aesthetic reality. So this is a very interesting conclusion, which doesn't seem to match what he's been talking about the entire time, this emperor, the wall, the burning of the books, but he's managing to shift it into a sort of much more global metaphysical perspective. And notice what he said about conjectural content, right? He's engaged in a number of conjectures in this, or at least followed out conjectures that perhaps other people have provided on this particular massive matter. And he's suggesting that maybe the wall and the project of burning the books, an incomplete project, and even this emperor have a certain virtue in themselves apart from the conjectures. You might say, well, why did you give us conjectures then? And that remains a sort of enigma within the structure of this piece.